Good afternoon. I'd like to get started again. Today's lecture is on the Massachusetts Bay Colony, also known as New England, also known as the Puritans, as it were. And the title, Puritans Become Yankees, is again, well, that follows from one of the main points that we'll get to in a second. But let me recap briefly what we talked about on Monday. That was Virginia. If I had to sum up in a single word the experience of the Virginia colony, and I'm not one to sum up things in a single word, as you know, the word would be exploitative or exploitation. Remember, it began with, after starvation, it was a tobacco boom that brought on waves of indentured servants who died in large numbers. After mortality rates subsided and the indentured servants lived, then we reproduced in Virginia the same big imbalance that we saw in England at the time, namely that there were a few people who owned all the land, and the rest were landless, disaffected, rural proletarians. When that erupted in Bacon's Rebellion, the response was to transfer some of that exploitation onto African slaves instead. So the system remained exploitative. After 1690 or so, at which time almost anyone who was coming to America and had a choice went to Pennsylvania. Almost nobody came to Virginia except people in chains, meaning there were African slaves still coming in the 18th century, and then there were convicts as well. So Virginia was an exploitative system. It had representative government. You remember that representative government was largely corrupt, full of officials that paid themselves exorbitant salaries and charged people exorbitant fees for everything, including the right to leave the colony. Right. For New England, by contrast, if I had to pick a single word, it would be theocracy. In a sense, we have here two distinct American cultures. This being an American cultures class, it makes sense that we should look at America as a collection of cultures. And even at the beginning, we see that that's exactly what's going on. As we talk about how the Puritans settled in New England, we'll see that there are some very, very significant differences between the way New England developed and the way Virginia developed. There are three other cultures that we'll talk about next week. Those will be the Middle Colonies, the Deep South, and the Frontier West. We won't talk about them in as much detail because these two, the Chesapeake region and New England, I see as the home of these two ideologies that shape the American Revolution. So these are, in a sense, the most influential of the cultures. The last time we talked about the ideology that we talked about in the context of Virginia was republicanism. The ideology that we will talk about in terms of New England will be liberalism. We'll get to that, but probably not much today because the topic today really is, because there's just so much to say about New England that it's easier to talk about that in the context of the Revolution itself. So the main points, Massachusetts, we should say New England, did not turn out as planned, just like all of the other colonies. Within a few generations, maybe one and a half, the Puritans, whom we'll spend a lot of time on today, who settled in New England, morph into Yankees. We'll spend a lot of time telling what we mean by Puritans. I think it's a little bit surprising. We come to that word, I think, with a lot of modern definitions of what we think of as Puritans, but Puritans are not prudes. They're a group of people with a strong religious identity. We'll talk about that. By Yankees, I mean liberal capitalists, right? People who take advantage of opportunity, and people who are largely behind the ideologies, at least, that fuel the Industrial Revolution in the United States. Yankees are more or less liberals. We'll talk about. A very different group from the Puritans. Puritans are focused on spirituality. Yankees very much focused on reality. Well, I should say on the human sphere, let's say. Right? Nonetheless, my second point here is that the legacy of the Puritans is quite significant. New England's Yankees, who are, I'm going to argue, a legacy of the Puritans, are going to champion this ideology that is very much in opposition to the classical republicanism that we talked about of Virginia. So from these New England Puritans, we can draw a line to the Federalists in the great debate over the Constitution. Are there questions about that? Okay, then let's get to the details here. Well, that's funny how these things worked out. Okay, I'm going to start again with England in the 1600s to give a sense of where the Puritans come from. We'll go through that fairly quickly. A lot of that is reminding you of things that we've already talked about, but we'll look at it from a slightly different angle. Then we'll spend some time with who are the Puritans and what they believed, how they came about, and how they chose to settle in the New World. Then we'll talk about the political development and how that follows from the religious ideology. I'm going to argue that politically, New England walks the very fine line between democratic agricultural paradise on the one hand and one-party totalitarian theocracy on the other. Just right on the line between those two. Okay? And then hopefully we'll have time to talk about some of the stresses that are responsible for the fall, really, of Puritan control. Those will be demographic, economic, spiritual, and political. And to that, I'll add, most importantly, really, the Enlightenment, which again we mentioned. All right. So, starting again with the England in the 1600s, you'll remember in Virginia we saw this very same slide, and I talked about population growth. What happened here? Population growth in a really rigid society with a rigid static technology, and you get lots and lots of poor people. Poor people figure heavily in the settlement of Virginia. Poor people are not settled, do not figure heavily in the settlement of New England. Instead, New England is settled more by these middling sorts. And the middling sorts are another distinct group that grows in this period. They're not nearly as numerous as the poor, but they also grow, and they are composed of, I mean, some of them are very wealthy, some of them are very well educated, but what they really are people who are not as rigidly tied to this essentially medieval society. They're people who own a small amount of land, for example, and they can benefit. They're not people who rent out land. Land rental is very much within this system. The rates at which the rules under which land renting takes place are kind of fixed. But people who own just enough land to produce something for surplus, they're in a really good position here. You own or control enough land that you can hire some of these laborers. And remember, there's lots of excess labor, so wages are falling. If you're in a position to hire those, you're going to do well. You're also going to do well because in this period, there's a lot of inflation. There's inflation. Inflation is running about 3% over this century. That's not much for today, but by the standards of this period, that's quite significant because there used to no inflation at all. And so inflation occurs. This puts you in a good position. If you consider that position, you own some land, your wage bill is falling, and the prices of what you sell are rising. Right? So you're in a better position. More significantly, though, there are merchants. Trade is something that's going to grow, particularly in the British Empire, particularly in the 18th century, but also in the 17th. So export merchants, these people are becoming very, very rich. And then there are these professionals, the lawyers, the stewards. Stewards are people who manage the estates of large landowners. And the clergy. Literacy is rising. This is a period when the printing press is being a lot more widely used. There's lots more to read, and education is growing. And this class of people who have skills that are not locked up by guild systems or by the statutes of artificers of 1563 and things like that. People whose position in society is a little more flexible. They're in a position to benefit, and they very much do in this period. These are coincidentally also, or not coincidentally, the people for whom Protestantism appeals. These are people who are literate, after all. And one of the main tenets of Protestantism is that people should read the Bible themselves. So where the Catholic Church restricted reading the Bible to clergy, Protestantism is all about people reading the Bible. So it shouldn't be surprising then that these middling sorts are not only Protestants, but they also comprise the most zealous of Protestants. Okay. All right. In other words, Protestants were often middling sorts. Some, as we'll see, are very wealthy, and some are even part of government. The Puritans, note in some form or another, are the ones, as we'll see, who in the 1640s wind up taking over the government. They're a side in the Civil War, and they're the winning side. Oliver Cromwell is a Puritan, and that's going to figure heavily into how things play out in New England. But we'll get to that later. So, if you had to say who are the Puritans, they're English Protestant zealots. They're the people who really believe what Calvin is saying. Recall that we drew a distinction between Calvinism and Lutheranism earlier. Martin Luther being the original Protestant, John Calvin of Geneva, who has a somewhat more radical view, and that's quite important. It's because of that that these Puritans are not trusted. Remember, England is a Protestant country, right? Ever since Henry VIII, which is the early 1500s, England is technically Protestant. But the Puritans are fairly far out on a limb. Henry VIII, as well as Elizabeth, wanted a church that was still hierarchical and very largely Catholic in appearance, even if it's Protestant in doctrine. The Puritans don't like that. They see the Anglican Church largely as, they would use the term crypto-papist, and as a result, they are persecuted. They're persecuted rather spectacularly under Mary I. Remember, Mary I is Bloody Mary. She's a Catholic of Henry VIII's kids. She's Catholic. She rules briefly, but it's under her reign that many Puritans exile themselves and become even more zealous by spending some time in Geneva and in the Netherlands. Under Elizabeth, the persecution is much less, but after Elizabeth dies, we bring back James. James I comes to the throne. He is less enamored of Puritans, and he's basically absolutist. Remember, he's the King James Bible, but he likes Anglicanism. Charles I is far less flexible than James I. He's the one who ultimately loses his head, but he's also persecuting these Puritans quite a bit. And it's here, during this period, when the bulk of the Puritans leave England for the New World is in the Winthrop fleet. And I'll distinguish them from there. Are a couple of ships that go before this. This is the bulk of it. This is what really makes New England work, is John Winthrop. Then under Oliver Cromwell and the Protectorate, there's no persecution at all because, as I mentioned, Cromwell is a Puritan. Puritans win the war against Charles I. And so this, we'll see, is good in some sense for New England, but it's paradoxically not so good economically because immigrants stop coming. And that causes some problems for the Puritan economy. And part of that adjustment is part of the story of how they become Yankees. Under Charles II, who comes back to the throne after the Protectorate fails, that is known as the Stuart Restoration. From then on, persecution of Puritans is on the decline, and after 1689, Puritans are officially tolerated. And note, Catholics are not. That won't happen until 1833. And that will have an important, interesting impact on Irish in America. We'll talk about that in a few weeks. But the main story to keep in mind here is that after Charles I, things get less and less hot for Puritans in England. And so the New England colonies largely left alone. There's not a lot of immigration to it after this. This will bring up an interesting question, though, people want to mention. Why, if Charles I hates the Puritans, as I've asserted, why does he give them a charter to go settle in New England? It's not like they run away. New England is a colony the US, of the English king. The reason for that is largely because Catholics are settling in French Canada at this time. From Charles' point of view, this is a really good use of Puritans. We don't like them. We Anglicans don't really care for Puritans, but we can plant Puritans right between us and these Catholics. They can definitely be counted on to do the right thing because they hate Catholics even more than we do, as if that were possible. A similar sort of strategy is employed by Cromwell and earlier kings, planting Scots Presbyterians in Ireland to act as a buffer against Catholics in Ireland, and that's going to figure heavily into one of our culture zones that we'll talk at least briefly about later. Okay, now let's go on. There are two flavors of Puritans, as if we needed more Protestant division at this time. But these two are kind of interesting and are kind of important here. The key issue that separates these two Puritan groups are separatism, the question of whether the Anglican Church is in fact a church. And it's the smaller group, the more radical Puritans, who are separatists, argue that it's not. They argue that it's simply not a church. A church for them is defined as this voluntary association of those who are worthy of worship. And it's important for the church to expel those who are not worthy. So this is a very exclusivist view of Protestantism. These people largely left England because this is not a politically acceptable position. So to the extent that they're in England, this time they're underground. Most of them wind up in Holland, and they come together, the two groups come together, and leave on the Mayflower in 1620. That is, the Mayflowers is settlers on the Mayflower on both these Dutch exiles, English exiles to Holland, as well as some underground separating Puritans, separatist Puritans in England. But they're not a very important part of our story. It's one ship. It's a small settlement. The other group, the one led by John Winthrop, he brings a much larger settlement 10 years later to New England. And his view is much more subtle. Their view, I should say, is more subtle. they see the Anglican Church is still worth saving. They just want to change it. They just want to do away with these vestiges of Rome. That means they want to do away with the bishops. The English Church has bishops. It's fine. They still do, I believe. And they want to do away with a lot of ceremony. They want to do away with a lot of church decoration, if there were any left. It's kind of hard to believe that there still is much in the way of church decoration left in England, but to the extent that there's anything pretty in the church, the Puritans want to get rid of it. But they think separation is heresy. They think it's absolutely wrong to leave the church. And this is a very good political position to have, because if they didn't have this position, their charter would surely have been revoked. So they believe it, but it happens to be also convenient for them. In a broader sense, what we know now, there are two kinds of Puritans, but here's what Puritans all believe. Or when we speak of Puritans, this is what we think we mean. It's a little bit dicey to speak of Puritans. This is not a term that they apply to themselves. It was a derisive term applied to them by others. They would call themselves Anglicans or Protestants. So we touched on some of these before. Superlapsarian, fancy word for extreme predestination. And I mentioned this earlier. This is one of the things that separate them from the Lutherans. They have a belief that everything is predetermined, that God planned everything before the fall. Before the fall, meaning before Adam and Eve. So what's going to happen? Your state of salvation is already determined. There's nothing that you can do about it. Bibliocentric is also common to most Protestants, but they take it a little bit further. Churches take it a little bit further. The Bible answers every question. And so they're going to use the Bible, to the extent that they can, as a legal code, as well as a source of spirituality. The Bible is extremely important. In addition, there are these five classical Calvinist positions, which follow in some sense from those above. Total depravity is this belief that humans are totally depraved, and you need look no further than your own soul to know that's true. They believe that nobody merits salvation. Salvation is only a gift from God. You do not deserve it. They believe in unconditional election, so if God grants you salvation, there's nothing you can do about it. It's unconditional. No matter what you do, you are saved. The limited atonement means they don't believe that Christ died for everybody. Christ only died for the elect. If Christ died for everybody, then everybody could go to heaven, and religion wouldn't be any fun. So in the Puritan view, in the Calvinist view, only the elect are saved. Only the elect can expect to go to heaven, and they, of course, don't know how. Grace is irresistible sounds like more of the same. Means that if God decides that you are saved, there isn't much you can do about it. There's anything you can do about it. He will open up your heart, and you'll be saved. And perseverance, saintliness, saints is somebody who is elect. Perseverance of the saints simply means that, again, if you fall away from the church, it means you really weren't saved in the first place. Because if you were saved, you would always be saved. Right? So these are standard Calvinist beliefs. And another aspect that's useful for describing the development of politics government is covenant theology. Covenant theology is more of a framework than a doctrine. It's a way of interpreting Scripture, and it follows that essentially deals are made. That God offered before the Garden of Eden, God offered a covenant of works, which was do as I say, and you will be saved. After Adam and Eve proved that they couldn't quite handle that, that was replaced with a covenant of grace, which is to believe, have faith, and you'll be saved. The Puritans really like that, and they applied that theory all the way to society. And the idea here is that society has to police the behavior of individuals. If individuals sin, society will be punished. That's where that sort of follows. All right? This covenant business is important. We'll talk a little about how towns work later. It's going to come up. It's going to come up again. It is interestingly, I think it has an interesting tension between the idea of covenants and the idea of predestiny. Right? On the one hand, it's a contract. On the other hand, it's already predetermined. But that sort of tension is typical for Puritans. It's really tough to be a Puritan. You put all this together. You think about it. Puritans must lead righteous lives. But righteousness cannot be the goal. Why is that? Well, you need to lead a righteous life in order to be saved and in order not to be a disaster for your community. But if righteousness is your goal, that is an act of hubris, because that means you're trying to manipulate God's will. So there's a tension. There's a tension here. You have to seek salvation, right? But nothing you can do can affect salvation. And to even ask, really, to even wonder about whether or not you're saved is sinful. Because it's up to God. And you're just such an infinitesimal, tiny little insect to God that it's an affront to pretend to want to know these things. You need to love your spouse. As I said, they're not prudes about that. But not too much. Because you don't want to distract from the love of God. Wealth is not frowned upon. Wealth is what might be a sign of God's approval. Remember, God has elected people. There's no reason they shouldn't be successful. It would make sense. But at the same time, there are a lot of ways to be successful that are sinful. So it's not quite clear. It's not being successful, particularly being a merchant in New England, is a very dangerous place in Puritan New England. And to summarize the whole thing, everyone is a sinner, but sinners have to be severely punished. So there's a kind of institutionalized neurosis. And the Puritans, to their credit, they struggle with this stuff. Part of the reason that we know a lot about them is they're very literate. They write a lot. And they write a lot about their struggles with these kinds of problems. They are constantly worried about the state of their soul, and then they're worried about the fact that they're worried about the state of their soul. And it goes on. It's kind of like a roller coaster.